Chapter 4. The Road. Adam was too excited to sleep much that night. He heard the monks singing matins in the church at midnight, and later a rooster crowing. He saw the first grey light of dawn streak the bits of sky that showed through the pointed windows. He was up before the other boys in the dormitory stirred, and ran, shivering in the early chill, to the big stone basin in the lavabo to wash. He had new clothes from the skin out, which his father had brought him from France. He put them on carefully in the dark, the breeches, the long hose, and pointed shoes, the sleeved undergarment called a cot, and over that a sleeveless surcoat exactly like Roger's, made of a fine silk material called ray. It had blue and green and tawny stripes going around them, and the hem was cut with points that fluttered around his knees when he moved. He felt very proud in it, and wished that he had a looking-glass like a fine lady's to see himself. On his head, over his cap, he wore a green hood, with a little cape over his shoulders. The room was getting lighter now, and the sleeping boys around him were stirring a little. He turned all the things out of his wallet and counted them over. 2 silver pennies, the case containing his knife of Sheffield steel, and his silver spoon, his comb, and some comfits that Roger had given him wrapped up in a piece of cloth. He bit off the end of one and found it sweet and spicy. He selected half of them, the pink, the green, the brown, and the creamy one for Perkin, and laid them on his shelf. Then he fastened the wallet and hung it on his belt. He folded his woolen coverlet into a square and tied up in it his other cot and breeches. The drab homespun surcoat, which his father had said he wouldn't give a pulled hen for, Adam decided to leave behind, to be passed on to some other boy who needed it. He took his harp down from the shelf and hung it over his shoulder. For some time birds here and there had been giving little chirps and chuckles. Now they suddenly all burst into a joyful shout together. Clear pale light washed into the long room, and colors began to show. A green branch outside one window, the rose and blue designs painted on the walls, the bright orange coverlet on a bed. Perkin rolled over and sat up and blinked. "If you ever get to Ewelme in Oxfordshire," he said, "my father is a ploughman there. His name is Watt, and he lives near the church. My mother makes the best kidney pie you ever ate." He paused to yawn and rub his eyes. "If you see the parson, tell him I'm studying hard. He arranged for me to come here." "I might get back here before I get to Ewelme," said Adam. "Roger says Sir Edmund has a great many manors, and he's always moving about from one to another." A bell clanged with a hearty, cheerful sound, and at once the dormitory was full of arms and legs, as 20 boys jumped or rolled or were dragged out of bed. "My faith," said Perkin, "I better hurry." That was all the goodbye they had. With the bell the day began. It swept them swiftly along and apart. For the last time Adam went with the other boys to the Abbey church for the service called Prime. After it was all over, Adam went to look for his father in the great stable. He found Bayard saddled and bridled, and Roger repacking the portmanteau, which he had carried strapped behind his saddle. "Run and get your things," he said when he saw Adam. "I'll put them in this." Adam ran and was soon back. He didn't want to miss a minute of this huge dim stable, which was full of the warm smell of horses and the rich sounds of whinnyings and neighings and jinglings of harness and the voices of the Delisle servants. Here and there a shaft of sunlight came through a slit in the wall, and motes danced in it so thickly that it looked like golden rain. "Now," said Roger, fastening the last strap, "let's see if this will do. Up you go." He had fastened the bag with all their possessions in it behind the saddle, and covered it with Adam's folded blanket. Adam put his foot in his father's hand and swung up into his improvised seat. Bayard's back was broad and high, and Adam felt as if he were on top of the world. The bag was comfortable to ride on, and he could hold on to Roger or the high back of the saddle to steady himself. I can carry Nick if he gets tired running, can't I? He asked, a little anxiously. We'll see. Shall I go get Nick now? Nick was pretty good at heeling, but Adam had always kept him on a leash in a crowd. Would he know to follow Bayard? Adam wanted to explain the new way of traveling to him. Cut along. Wait for me beside the road in front of Dame Mulkin's. Adam slid down and dashed out into the sunshine again. In front of the abbot's palace the carriage was standing, bright with its grey colours. Adam could not resist the temptation to go over and look at it. The door at the back stood open, and nobody was about except 2 men who were busy with the horses, and did not seem to be noticing him. He climbed up and peered in through the door. He had time only for a swift impression of rich tapestries and cushions before 2 children jumped up from one of the benches and came to the door. One of them was the little girl he had seen yesterday. The other was a boy of his own size, evidently a page. Adam dropped back on the ground again. "Look, Hugh," cried the little girl in French. "It's the boy I told you about, the one that stands on his head." So she had seen him before she pulled the curtain. Adam wagged his head a little and grinned. The boy called Hugh jumped down beside him. He was a proud-looking boy with curly yellow hair and blue eyes like bits of glass, and a thin nose that seemed to be pulling his short lip up over his front teeth. He was wearing a sky-blue surcoat with wide sleeves edged with fur. He and Adam looked at each other, and neither one liked what he saw. "He's got a red spaniel that walks on its hind legs," said the girl. "It's a darling dog." She looked, Adam thought, too beautiful and high-born for words, standing there in her scarlet gown with the breeze stirring her curls and her brown eyes shining. Adam's heart softened and spread like butter in the sun. "I saw the dog," said Hugh loftily. "It's a good enough dog for a common tumbler, but nothing to say one of a dozen dogs we have at home." If he had said Nick was nothing to his own special dog, Adam would have understood and forgiven him, but to say Nick was nothing to a dozen assorted dogs, that was too much. Adam thought longingly of wrestling with Hugh, of rolling him over in the mud and mussing up his pretty blue surcoat, but he had been too well trained by Roger to attempt anything of the kind. Minstrels did not fight with their audiences. He turned to the girl instead and grinned. "It's easy enough," he said, also in French, to boast about dogs that aren't here to be seen. It occurred to him that Hugh had also said something uncomplimentary about him. He took that up next. "As for me," he said, with dignity, "I am not a tumbler. I am Roger, the minstrel's son." The girl gave him a friendly smile. "Oh, I like Roger. Where's your dog now, Roger the minstrel's son?" "He's at Dame Mulkin's. I was just going to get him. My name's Adam." "Well, you'd better go along then," said Hugh, sulkily. It was good advice, but Adam was of no mind to take it from Hugh. He pretended not to hear it. "That's the best carriage I ever saw," he said to the girl. She made a little face. "You wouldn't think so if you had to ride in it. It bumps and jolts so that you're all bruised from being banged about from one side to the other. Father thinks it's wonderful, but I notice he never rides in it himself." Hugh got into the carriage again and tried to pull her away from the door. "Come, Marjorie, don't talk so much." "Well," said Adam, "I'd better be going." He put on his best son of Roger manner. "Farewell, lady, have a good day," and added impudently to Hugh, "Farewell, Sir Honeycomb." Marjorie, he thought, as he walked briskly away without looking back. Marjorie DeLisle. Now that was the kind of girl he liked. After stopping at the gatehouse to say goodbye to the porter, he ran down the hill to the river and across the bridge. The morning mist was still rising in the wet lowland, and the St. Mary's lace by the roadside was hung with tiny drops. He found Dame Malkin with her skirts pinned up and wooden clogs on her feet, out feeding her hens, while Nick, forbidden to come near, lest he frighten the fowls, sat on the doorstep and yawned. Adam sat down beside him and told him about Bayard and how he was to follow close behind, but not close enough to get in the way of the horse's heels. He was quite sure that Nick, though he might not understand every word, grasped the general idea. "Well, I'll miss you both," said Dame Malkin, standing with her hands on her broad hips, looking down at them. Adam gave her 2 of his remaining comfits. A poor widow in a village wouldn't taste of such sweetmeats once in a year's time, and a silver penny. She gave him a cabbage leaf full of strawberries that she had found for him. It was easier to say good-bye when you had something to give. Already the first riders of the Delisle train were passing the cottage. "Watch for a dappled grey war-horse," said Adam to Dame Malkin. "That will be Bayard." The dame laughed. "How would a minstrel come by a war-horse?" she said. "I'll bet you your Bayard's no more than a hobby-horse." Adam knew she was teasing him. "You wait and see," he said calmly. By the time he had finished his strawberries, Roger was there, and Dame Malkin had to admit that Bayard was certainly a war-horse. Roger reached down a strong hand to Adam, and Adam scrambled up to his portmanteau perch. Out on the road it felt higher and grander than ever. He waved to Dame Malkin, and she threw him a kiss. "Come on, Nick," he called. "Come on, fellow." For the first few miles he was so busy getting accustomed to the motion of the horse and hallooing to Nick to come on or to come back that he did not notice the road or the other people on it. He missed the last view of the abbey riding on its hill beyond the river. He scarcely saw St. Stephen's Church or the roofs of Sopwell Nunnery among the trees. He even forgot about the carriage and Marjorie Delisle and Hugh. The open fields passed, and they moved into a forest thick with beech and oak and elm and fringed at the edge with ferns.